Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Summer happens fast in Vermont, so being able to stop at a roadside farm stand for fresh produce is a real delight. We sometimes take for granted that fresh food also needs to be safe to eat. That's why the Food Safety Modernization Act was put into law. It's a federal law that sets standards for food producers from national corporations to family farms. One aspect of the law that big brands don't have to consider is visitors. But for farmers running pick-your-own operations or hosting harvest festivals, the role the public plays in food safety is a top priority. Across the Fence, associate producer Keith Silva and photographer Rebecca Gollin visited a farm stand that's setting the standard for small farms in Vermont.
At Cedar Circle Farm in East Thetford, the produce looks downright immaculate. From the greens in the cooler to the blueberries on the shelf, the food here is the epitome of healthy, wholesome, and nutritious. Out in the fields, a few hundred yards from the farm stand, it's a slightly different story.
It comes from the soil. Farming is not a clean job.
Maya Fisherburn is the processing lead at Cedar Circle Farm. She's the first line of defense in making sure the food sold here is as safe as it is fresh.
The moment that it comes out of the field, we try to process and get it into coolers as fast as we can. We fill up these 3 sinks, and we have a rinse, a wash, and a rinse again. Everything gets triple washed here.
Fisherburn takes pride in the farm's sanitation guidelines, and she expects every member of the staff to do likewise.
Everyone that works here, you're not just a harvester, or you're not just a weeder. To keep the standards that we want, I want the harvesters to know what it looks like when it's processed, how to process it, why it's so important that we keep good standards and don't get people sick and things like that,
The FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA for short, was signed into law in 2011. The law sets standards that focus on the prevention of foodborne illness rather than reacting to a problem after it occurs. The food safety guidelines Cedar Circle put in place before FSMA was enacted puts the business in good standing to be in compliance with the law.
Cedar Circle is a model in so many ways.
Lisa Chase works for University of Vermont Extension. She specializes in agricultural tourism. Even with Cedar Circle Farm's proactive approach to food safety, there are still details in the regulations that need to be worked out.
Well, one thing that's really challenging for a lot of farms in Vermont is that these federal regulations were created for large businesses, huge farms that have had problems with food safety in the past. So those regulations are often set up for an entirely different type of agricultural operation than what we often have in Vermont. So here we have smaller farms and not so many steps in the processing till it goes out the door. And especially with direct sales, the farmer and the consumer are often interacting directly. They know each other. So one of our jobs with Extension is to help farms comply with the regulations without having the regulations become such a burden.
In addition to the farm stand, Cedar Circle also operates a summer camp. There's a pick-your-own operation, and the farm hosts several yearly festivals. The farm's reliance on community interaction means the public has to be incorporated into the farm's requirements in regards to food safety.
Running a farm is complicated and challenging as is. And one of the ways that farms in Vermont have really succeeded is by building community and building these direct markets. So for a lot of farms like Cedar Circle, those community interactions and being open is a key part of their business model. It's having multiple business enterprises within an already complicated farm structure.
To keep everything running as efficient as possible, Cedar Circle uses signage to direct customers to what's off limits, where to go in a thunderstorm, and the farm's policy on pets. The signs are a subtle way to include the public into the farm's culture.
It's almost invisible. It becomes part of the system.
Hans Estrin is a produce safety specialist with UVM Extension.
Food safety and the practices, good practices around food safety, can be integrated to make a real efficient, profitable, and happy farm. And it can be a driver, in fact, because when you start to think through and put on these goggles of risk reduction and you look at your farm, what it drives you to is this separation, coming up with systems, standard operating procedures, and writing them all down and separating them.
Across the Fence first visited Cedar Circle Farm in 2011. At that time, the farm required visitors to wash their hands before going into U-pick areas. Customers were skeptical at first, but understood the policy was for the greater good.
I've never been asked to wash my hands before berry picking before.
Janet Cathy is a longtime Cedar Circle Farm customer. When she was asked to wash her hands before berry picking, she was happy to abide by the farm's policies.
Anybody could have something on their hands that isn't clean, so it makes sense to have your hands washed. And then I realized that I could be leaving something on the berries for somebody else to get, so I understand about being considerate.
We also learned in our 2011 visit that Cedar Circle has a food safety manual for employees. When Fisherburn started working here a few years ago, she didn't understand why the farm would need a food safety guide. She quickly caught on.
As a berry picker, when I first started here, I'm like, SOP system? I'm like, what? Yeah, they're teaching me to wash my hands and like rules and regulations, what not to do. But then during my second year, I'm like, wow, they actually have this all written down. What to do if like glass gets broken in here. They have every like scenario and even how to watch every vegetable. That's typed out. I'm very lucky to have inherited that, and I hope to like tweak it and keep going with it.
For Estrin, policies and procedures, like those in use and on display at Cedar Circle Farm and other Vermont farms, make for good business.
I think the most important thing for retaining the character and beauty and openness of Vermont farms for visitors is that each farmer knows their customers, they know what the regulations are, they know how to look at their farm and reduce risks, and they know how to interact with their customers. We don't have a cookie cutter way to solve this problem. That will really turn people off and it will hurt the industry. We really need each farm to take common sense regulation and integrate it into their own farm.
From the field to the farm stand, a little common sense goes a long way in making sure the freshest food from Vermont farms is also the safest. In East Thetford, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
I'm joined in the studio now by Lisa Chase, the UVM Extension Agritourism Specialist, and Abby Willard, an Agricultural Development Director with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Lisa, talk a little bit about agritourism and the benefits to having visitors visit a farm.
Agritourism is very, very important here in Vermont. We define agritourism broadly as any time a farm is open to visitors, and those visitors could be coming from a long distance, or they may be your neighbors. They may be Vermonters just a few miles away or from across the state. Common examples around the state are farm stands on the farm, pick your own operations, berries and apples, harvest festivals, dinners on the farm, or farm stays. And this is important for farm viability, bringing in additional income. It's also important for consumers, for visitors, because so many people are so disconnected from agriculture, and this gives the public an opportunity to learn about where food comes from and understand more about the importance of agriculture to our working landscape.
And also taste the difference in the produce.
That's right.
What's Extension's role in food safety on farms that are open to the public?
Extension's mission is education. So we are not regulators. We work with farms to provide one-on-one assistance, workshops. For example, we have a food safety workshop coming up on August 9th that will be at Cedar Circle Farm, the farm that was featured in the video. And what we in Extension do is provide resources and research-based information to support farms as they deal with any issue, including these food safety regulations.
Abby, how about the agency's role in on-farm food safety?
Well, our objective is to provide protection to consumers for access to safe food, as well as support viable businesses. So we want to see viable ag and food businesses in the state. And so one of the ways that we're able to do that is through creating regulatory programs that have intertwined real education, technical assistance components. And around food safety, really thinking about where do the contaminations come from. So knowing that that could be from humans, from animals, from the soil, from water, from our tools and equipment, and different interactions that we have with the product.
And so, Abby, what are some of the specific examples of what a farm should consider to reduce food safety risks?
Yeah, so it can be really simple for many farms. A lot of the strategies are really common sense and really thinking about creating a culture of food safety on the farm with the farmers and with their customers, and really thinking about what are the different best management practices that we can implement. So that could be really clear things around covering your product when you're serving it, so making sure that it doesn't get contaminated from dust or flies or from manure. Keeping all the surfaces that produce is touching clean and sanitized, so removing the dirt and then sanitizing to remove any bacteria. Really thinking about cleaning your equipment that has any contact with your product. Maintaining the proper temperature depending upon if it's meat or dairy products or storage of produce.
And so, Lisa, what about some of the things about inviting visitors and customers to the farm? Are there factors to consider with that as far as keeping things safe?
Yes, that really complicates issues for a farm. Signage is extremely important. Many visitors have never been on a farm before. They need clear directions. It's helpful to have information, for farms to have information on their website or Facebook, even before visitors come, saying, don't wear flip-flops, don't wear high heels.
Right.
And then signage around the farm, helping to direct visitors and show them what's safe and not safe, as well as bathrooms, sinks with running water, ways for people to clean their hands after they've been, say, petting the animals and then want to go pick blueberries.
Which is really interesting, which is what we saw in the video, which is clear steps for people to follow.
Yes, and visitors appreciate it. Sometimes farmers feel like, well, I don't want to overmanage the visitors, but for a lot of visitors, it's actually comforting because this is a new situation for them. So it helps them understand, here's how I behave and here's what's okay.
It also shows them firsthand, this is what happens at this facility and this is how food gets to the table, and it's really important that all along the way, safety is something that's considered.
Right. People often have this idyllic image of a farm and everything's safe. Well, climbing on a tractor is not safe if you don't know what you're doing. So that's where the signage and the information for visitors is very important.
Now, Abby, we've been talking about pick your own and farm stands. What about prepared food?
Well, the goals are the same. We still want to see high quality products come out of the state. We still want to see viable ag and food businesses, and we want to have an attention to public health. So same objectives, but then you realize depending upon the product that you're producing, the different contaminants may change. So for, say, maple producers, you're really thinking about chemical residue contamination, sort of not making it into the final finished product.
Right.
For meat and poultry producers and processors, they're really thinking about microorganisms and microbial bacteria contamination of Salmonella or E. coli or Listeria. When we're thinking about produce, we're looking at also specifically at microbial bacteria. When you're doing processed food, there's all those different additional steps of processing. So you're looking at both the biological and the chemical, but also physical contamination. So not wanting to see glass or plastic or metal shavings to make it into the finished product.
Right. It's kind of daunting when you say federal regulations on food safety, but really what this is all about is helping farmers come up with practices that work best for their farms.
That's exactly right. And a lot of these practices are common sense practices. Wash your hands, for example. And a lot of them actually make good financial sense as well. So while some farms may be feeling overwhelmed, we should clarify that not all farms will fall under FSMA. So not everyone needs to comply. And even for those that do need to comply, and whether you need to comply or not, Extension and the Agency of Agriculture and other the Vermont Department of Health, there are others around the state with resources, and we can also provide one-on-one technical assistance and support to help farms get through this.
And to learn more about the upcoming workshops we mentioned, you can go to Food Safety for Farms, open to visitors. Takes place on Thursday, August 9th at Cedar Circle Farm. There is a $10 registration fee. For an agenda and other details, visit the website on your screen. Thanks so much for joining us today. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.